Okay, so this just sort of builds on what we learned last night about child nutrition programs and how they fit into school procurement. And so we'll be discussing various channels for getting your product into the schools. And Section A addresses the various types of market channels you can utilize to sell your products to schools, as well as the common benefits, potential drawbacks, and important considerations for your farm so that you can determine the best market channel options for your business. Then in Section B of the module, we'll discuss details about making direct-to-school sales work for you, such as meeting school market standards, understanding common vendor requirements, and approaching and establishing effective working relationships with school buyers. And then there is an end of module wrap up planning activity where you identify any knowledge gaps that you still have and begin outlining your goals and next steps for establishing effective working relationships with school buyers. We have only an hour, so I'm not sure how much of that we'll get to do, but at any rate, we are going to give it a shot. And there we go. So, here are our learning objectives, which I kind of covered. And so basically, there are two primary ways that you can get your food into school markets. You can either sell to the school directly, or you can sell to an intermediary entity, and then they distribute it to the school. And according to the USDA Farm to School Census, nationally, 63% of school districts that participate in farm to school use intermediaries, such as distributors. And 40% of schools report that they get local food through a farmer directly. Interestingly enough, though, in Kentucky, only 32% of school districts in Kentucky that participate in farm to school use intermediaries, while 62% of schools in Kentucky report that they get local food through a farmer directly. So that's kind of interesting. And when we talk about a channel, farm to school market channels, we're just talking about the route that you use, the path that your product takes from your field to the school. So just if you could, you know how to give me a hands up. Just let me know who has experience selling directly to schools. I'm not seeing any hands.
You do have David in the chat that said me, so he has experience selling directly to school.
Okay. And who has experience selling to schools through an intermediary market channel, like a regional distributor? Anybody? Well, this is good because it just gives me an idea, like, which information is most important to you, so that I can sort of tailor this to you. So how does your product get to the school? You can sell it through intermediated market channels, such as local retail outlets, food hubs, regional distributors. You can sell it to national wholesale distributors, or you can sell it directly to the school. And we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about all of these options. So what are some of the intermediated market channels? They include local retail outlets like Kroger, or even smaller local stores, regional aggregators and food hubs, which are organizations that take your product and maybe even may process it a little bit and combine your product with other farmers and then distribute it. Value-added processors who definitely process it a little bit further. And then independent local and regional distributors, which Kentucky has a few of. So selling to schools through local retail outlets. These are like local food cooperatives. These are member-owned entities, and they can vary from retail outlets to volunteer organizations. In Kentucky, if I just Googled local food cooperatives in Kentucky, and what I found was 2 food banks and 5 stores, grocery stores, like good food co-ops, mostly near Lexington. And most of these have a heavy emphasis on organic produce and sort of like niche kinds of products. But these member-owned entities can vary from retail outlets to volunteer organizations. They uphold cooperative principles and prioritize benefits for consumers and producers, such as, community stakeholders. And there are benefits and drawbacks. They can facilitate purchasing arrangements with schools by aggregating, storing, and/or delivering the product. However, depending on the structure and mission of these businesses, vendor requirements and fees for these services can be substantial. So that's a thought. So then you can sell to schools through food hubs. And the logo that you see there with the farmers produce, chefs create, we connect, that is the local food connection, what chefs want slogan. They serve Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. They advertise that if a purchaser orders one day, then the item is harvested the next day, and then it's delivered the day after that. So that's, a real advantage to being able to get something fresh to your intended audience right away. A food hub, by the way, the USDA definition of that is a centrally located facility with a business structure facilitating the aggregation, storage, processing, distribution, and/or marketing of locally produced food products. And Kentucky, as of January of 2017, had fewer than 10. So the local food connection, what chefs really want, based in Louisville, is kind of the biggest and most highest profile of these that we have. So these kinds of businesses are often local or regional in scale and aim to be financially viable while also having positive economic, social, and environmental impacts within their communities. They often aggregate multiple producers' products and distribute directly to consumers, grocery stores, and sometimes schools. They can be local procurement champions. They coordinate the aggregation, distribution, and/or marketing of locally and regionally produced foods from multiple producers. So you don't have to think that you have to fill the school systems needs completely. You can sell your product there and it can be combined with that of other producers. And they can reach multiple school markets. In addition, they often support value-added processing and can provide resources to help producers meet certification and insurance requirements for school markets. However, they may require significant time commitment from producers, especially if they're not already marketing to school districts. And lots of times you will, because schools don't have necessarily a lot of manpower to deal with fresh produce, lots of times they want things with a little bit of value added processing. They may want carrot sticks rather than whole carrots. So, this is one way that you can provide carrots and they can be processed and distributed in the format or the form, that the schools want them. If you want to have a product processed a little bit, the Kentucky Farm to School hub, which is kentuckyfarmtoschool.com, links to that USDA directory of food hubs. So that might be a help to you. So then this was an activity just looking at food hubs, but we're going to kind of just zip through this because we have a limited amount of time. And this, let me see if I can get my cursor on it. Not what I meant to do. This link right here can take you to the food hubs directory, and the kentuckyfarmtoschool.com website also provides this link if you hit the search button. So that's another way to find those. So selling to school through regional distributors. These businesses can range in scale, though they commonly include small and medium-sized, local, regional, and family-owned businesses. What chefs want, Creative Gardens, there again is a good example of a regional distributor in Kentucky. Not all distributors serve school markets, but when they do, this can greatly reduce the marketing burden for producers. Regional distributors can often be more flexible in working with small producers and may be willing to accept smaller volumes and a wider variety of products. There is a feeling, maybe a misconception among food service directors and school purchasers that they have to be able to procure all that they need of something from one local producer. And that actually isn't the case. They can purchase from more than one producer, and they also can, oh my goodness, I think someone is at my front door. And I think it's my husband, and I think he can't get in. Give me 1 second, please.
Well, while Jackie is going and taking care of that, I did put in the chat the new website that Jackie and the Kentucky Department of Ag worked on, called the Kentucky Farm to School Hub. And the link is kyfarmtoschool.com. And you can go on there and create a profile and put information in there about your farm. And then food service directors can actually search you and see your information, and that can happen vice versa as well. So Jackie, I was just telling them about the Farm to School Hub while you were stepped away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got that information sprinkled all through this, so we'll talk some more about that. I asked Tina if she could think of other regional distributors, and one that she came up with off the top of her head was in Mount Sterling, there's a Carl's Produce who kind of serves central and eastern Kentucky and distributes to schools. Sorry. Okay. So considerations for selling to schools through regional distributors. Regional distributor channels can be a good match for producers who are familiar with wholesale practices and those needing support for distribution to school sites. But there are many examples of regional distributors who source from small and diversified farms in a region or through food hubs to meet product demand of larger school markets. Many distributors rely on established suppliers. Therefore, engaging in school sales through distributor channels can be a challenge for producers who are more experienced selling direct to consumer. So here are some important considerations for selling to schools through distributors. Most distributors will require some kind of memorandum of understanding or even a contract, and you need to use really clear communication when constructing a production contract. Good contracts outline clear expectations and plan for the unexpected. Most distributors will require a food safety plan, and many require certification such as good agricultural practices and or on-farm inspections of food safety practices. Food safety certification requirements and communication with your buyer are discussed in more detail in Module 4. So product quality is an important consideration. Be sure to discuss post-harvest handling and review standards outlined in your agreement. Most distributors will expect a computerized invoice and record-keeping program, such as QuickBooks. And a program like this is something you'll want to be sure to include in your marketing plan. Don't forget to discuss contingency plans for addressing the unexpected, such as crop failure or natural disasters, and incorporate them into your contract appropriately. It's a very formal process dealing with regional distributors. And then if you get into national wholesale distribution channels, it's even up one more level. National wholesale distribution can be a good match for producers who are familiar with wholesale practices, or those who want to access school markets to move really large product volumes. Can I have a show of hands of how many people have worked with national wholesale distributors or think that this is something they might be interested in? Okay, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that simply because there aren't that many opportunities for small producers. They rely on large, like national wholesale distributors rely on large established suppliers, therefore vendor requirements, contracting processes, and required product volumes can be hard for smaller producers to meet and benefit from. And it is just a much more formal way of doing business. If you're just kind of getting started, that might not be where you want to start. But direct to school supply chains offer a lot of opportunities for small producers. And it's kind of what many people think of first when they hear of farm to school. It is a purchasing relationship directly between the producer and an individual school. When selling to school markets, producers market their products directly to school districts and coordinate logistics, such as distribution and delivery. And we're going to discuss a variety of approaches that producers can use to access school markets through direct marketing channels a little bit later in this module. So school buyers have lots of names. You might hear school food authorities, school nutrition directors, school food service managers, procurement managers. I think first of, what are they, child nutrition administrators now. So it can be kind of hard to know who to contact. And in fact, when we talked to producers a while back and said, what are your biggest barriers to selling to schools? One of the first things that came up was, I don't know who to contact in my local school. So that is one barrier that the Farm to School Hub can really help you with, the website that Mackenzie was mentioning earlier, in so much as you can go on there and you can search either by product that you have to sell or by area, and you can find the school food service directors or the school purchasers, because they have registered on that site and they have said what they want to buy. So you can find people that you know want to buy your product. And it really doesn't really matter what name they go by, because their contact information is on there and you know who to call. So there are lots of direct to school market channels. You might use a market or a farm stand. Very often producers can sell directly to schools through these farmers market kind of channels that they may already be utilizing. It's not unusual at all for school food service directors or, to peruse the farmers market to see what's available and to meet up with producers. So, that might be one way that you get in touch with them. And then there's community supported agriculture. And I really like this approach, especially if you're someone that's already doing community supported agriculture. You could approach a school about becoming a drop site, or you could maybe offer a fundraiser. They call it a farm raiser, where the school receives a portion of the produce from the sales. And it just helps you develop that relationship with the school. And then later you may sell directly to the school. And then there are school contracts and purchase orders where producers can sell directly to school districts. And there can be both formal and informal procurement methods. It is up to the school food service director to decide, what that's going to be. So there are collective purchasing models. Producers can potentially establish themselves as an approved supplier. So then they can access multiple school markets through a streamlined process. And that allows them to, there again, aggregate product demand so that you're not worried about having to deliver all the carrots a given school needs. And you can maybe be selling to more than one school. Back when I worked for the Department of Education as a school nutrition, what did we call ourselves? School nutrition consultant. That was it. Basically, we went around and we kind of reviewed or audited the different school food service organizations. And we were required to see if folks were buying from their educational cooperatives. That was their first, preferred way for them to buy, because it gave them the advantage of collective bargaining, to get the best prices. So if you could become approved to be a provider for one of the educational cooperatives, then you could just sell your product right to them, and the school food service directors would then order it from them. So that is one route that you can go. I see that we have farm to school contacts. Tina Garland is a branch manager at the Department of Agriculture, and she has been the farm to school coordinator since we had farm to school in Kentucky, and has really built the program. So she's an excellent contact if you want to know, who in your area or who's close to you that might be interested in your product. However, you can also find out that same thing, or at least to some degree, on the Farm to School Hub website. And then, of course, the schools branch of the Department of Education that I used to work for, Division of School and Community Nutrition, may be able to give you some guidance. And there are various state incentive programs, some grants for farm to school, and a lot of those have been actually targeting producers in the last few years. So that might be an opportunity for you to get some money toward your operation. So direct to school potential benefits include higher levels of customer satisfaction. If you're selling just locally, then the time from field to the plate is much shorter, and things are going to be fresher and they're going to taste better. You can help grow your business because you're a member of the community. And when you're selling directly to the school, you know, you have the opportunity to brand your product and to build a relationship with the school and with the families in the school, and just raise the community's awareness of you as a producer. And there are actually a lot of marketing tools that you can use. There's the Know Your Farmer campaign and Harvest of the Month programs that you can participate in that can help increase the profile of your business. Lots of times schools can use a lower grade product. One of the things that school food service directors told us when we were talking about barriers to buying local products was that we can't afford restaurant quality food. But, you know, a smaller apple is just as nutritious as a larger apple and easier maybe for a child to eat. So it may be that schools are actually a really good market for the kinds of things that you couldn't sell necessarily to a restaurant. Direct lines of communication provide opportunities to determine areas of flexibility and potential negotiation. And these support relationship building, which increases the likelihood of continued sales. And I can't stress enough that opportunity to talk directly to the food service director and to build a relationship. Once you have a relationship, you can start planning your operation and line it up with their operation. You know, once you know their menu and when they're going to need products and how much of it they're going to need, then, you know, you can plan your production to line up with what they need. So that's incredibly important. The ability to differentiate your value as a potential vendor by supporting educational opportunities is there. You can offer farm visits. You can offer to come to the school and do programs. You can do taste testing and provide samples to the kids. You can maybe get involved with the school garden and in-class education. There are all kinds of things that you can do to help build that relationship and your likelihood of being able to sell to that school. And school food procurement policies are largely defined at the local level. So requirements may be less stringent and more appropriate to your farm characteristics than selling to a larger entity in a more structured environment, like some of the intermediaries that we talked about earlier. Okay, some drawbacks. And these drawbacks are where, when we were working to develop the farm to school hub, KentuckyFarmToSchool.com, we really tried to address these drawbacks because these were things that producers told us were barriers to selling to schools. And we wanted to do everything that we could to lighten or lessen those barriers. So one thing is increased time spent marketing products. Establishing and managing relationships takes time, and this means valuable time away from the farm and or increased investment in staffing and labor. We have tried to provide some marketing, links to marketing products in the hub. This is something we hope to build on in the future. It's not as fleshed out as we would like it to be yet, but there is some there. People said that it was really hard to determine a fair price for their product. A careful consideration is needed to make sure that the product price is competitive and yet allows the producer to recover inputs such as labor, production, distribution, and insurance. One of the things that we've provided there is a link to the average state and national prices for given products. So that lets you know what other people are, it lets you know what the food service director can probably get that product for through a larger distributor, and what your competition is likely to be bidding. So it kind of helps you out a little bit there. Infrastructure improvements may be necessary to ensure post-harvest handling systems align with required food safety standards with regard to washing, processing, and storage of products. There are links in the Kentucky farm-to-school.com farm-to-school hub that deal with safety standards. Kentucky, and I'm hoping that Tina is on here and might pipe in, or someone, but as I understand it, Kentucky doesn't actually require these safety products or these safety certifications in order to sell to schools, but it is sort of a selling point that the schools may individually have requirements, or they may, even if they don't have requirements, they may just prefer to deal with someone who has, GAP certification. So on the Kentucky Farm to School hub, when you register, there's the opportunity for you to say if you have these certifications. So they might be a selling point for some of the school food service directors. And there are links on that site as well to all the KDA resources that tell you how to determine what kinds of training you need and what kinds of safety programs would be good for you. Quality management and traceability systems are required to reduce liability in case the unthinkable should happen, such as a foodborne illness or outbreak. Potential requirement for increased distribution capability or capacity. School clients are accustomed to a certain delivery and drop-off services from vendors. So if they've been doing business with big distributors, they always deliver right to the school, and that's what they're accustomed to. The website allows you to state whether you can deliver, and if you can deliver, what your radius would be. And that kind of helps you decide, right up front, if it's going to be profitable for you to do business with this particular school. And then school payment processes are really different from what you would expect with, say, a restaurant. With a restaurant, you're probably going to get paid when you deliver it. But school districts are bigger entities and they have their own payment process, and I'm sure that they pay on some kind of schedule. So you have to decide up front, can I, afford to delay payment until their cycle gets around to cutting my check. And there again, that's something that you can talk over with the school food service director, and you can find out what they require. in the way of documentation and how their payment structure works. So ultimately, what you're trying to do is to choose the market channel mix that works best for you. And it may not just be one, it may be, a combination of the two. So there are all kinds of ways to get your products into the schools, and each of the market channels offer diverse benefits and need to be explored with key considerations in mind. And there is a worksheet in the Farm to School, Bringing the Farm to School packet that is called the Farm to School Market Channel Assessment. And here again, I'm not going to take time today for us to go over this, but this is a look at the worksheet. And when you have time, I really believe it would be worth your time to work through this, and it might help you make some decisions about what you want to do. So on to section B, selling to school districts. So solicitations are how school districts communicate. They tell you what products they're looking for, when they need them, how much they need, and any requirements that they have for potential vendors. Solicitations are used both to solicit information from potential vendors, such as local producers like yourself, and to establish terms for a contract. So it may be an informal solicitation, just a conversation, or it may be a more formal solicitation, and that is up to the school to decide how they're going to pursue that. But it will probably call for background information, which outlines the goals and motivations of the program, a description of the goods and services, which tells you what the product is that's needed and specifications for it. It will tell you how the purchase will be evaluated and completed, and outline vendor requirements and award criteria. And it will give you a timeline, which states the duration of the purchasing agreement. Like, is it time limited, or is it ongoing? The Kentucky Farm to School Hub website allows purchasers and producers to enter some of this info. So if you use that, you will find out up front a little bit of this information. They may have some specification information, like if they're looking for a particular variety of something, or when they need it. Do they need it just once, or are they looking for something that's on their menu regularly and they're going to want, repeated deliveries? Some of that stuff is in there already, which can kind of help you decide if you want to pursue that a purchase with that particular school or not. So there are several types of solicitations used by school districts seeking to purchase local products. And these may be informal solicitations, such as providing quotes from micro and small purchases, to formal solicitations, such as requests for proposals, RFPs, or invitations to bid, IFBs. And my understanding is that these are usually found, the formal solicitations are usually found like in the local newspaper or on the school website. You can go to the school website, and it may be just under school things that are out for bid, or it may be that you have to go to the food service and look there. Does anybody know of another way that it's typically communicated?
I put in the chat, Jackie, that a solicitation could even just be like a food service director calling you and telling you what they want. And they might not have something written down, but they do, or they really should have something written down because it lays out the expectations between both parties. But I do know that like some of the food service directors I've worked with, they just really talk to the farmer about what they need and want, and then those would be under micro purchases.
Right, exactly. And that's something we have really tried to facilitate with the Farm to School website, in that you can go on and search by product. If somebody finds a product they want, they can send an inquiry because you've listed your contact information when you registered. So they can say, oh, I'm interested in your peppers, tell me more, or whatever. And then you can reply by email, or you can call them, and you can start working those sorts of things out. But if it's a formal purchasing relationship, school districts are required to publicly announce and advertise the RFPs and the IFBs. Informal solicitations don't require public posting. So these can be conducted through direct outreach to producers, as Mackenzie was saying, or with newer existing relationships to the school district. Okay. Let's see if we can get this to advance. I did. So specifications. This is just a description of the product standards required to meet the needs of the school market you're seeking to sell to. So they're not one size fits all, but commonly things that are included is like product and variety. So it may say, I want Granny Smith apples, and quality standards and size. I want, so many count per pound. I want how many like wholesale pack sizes. Do I want pounds of it, or do I want it packed so many to a case or whatever? So specifications are based on industry standards, and school buyers may be accustomed to receiving grade A products and wholesale pack size from distributors, but this doesn't mean that these standards are necessary for their operation. So this is an opportunity, for you to talk to the food purchaser and say, okay, this is what you're used to getting, but is that really what you want? Or is that what you have to have? Would you rather have it a different way? Or, figure out what it is that they really want so that you can make sure and meet their requirements. It helps also for them to wrap their heads around what they can expect a local producer to meet, because they're used to doing business a certain way lots of times with large distributors, and buying locally is new to them as selling locally maybe to you. So it just gives you an opportunity to talk it over and make sure that you can meet their standards and that their standards are what they really want. But once it's done, once the contract is in there, vendors have to be able to meet the required specifications stated in the solicitation, or they'll be considered non-responsive, which sounds kind of like you're dead. There are sample specifications on the KDA website. The link is listed there. The link is also, or maybe just the PDFs are also on the farmtoschool.com website. So it just gives you an idea of what to expect, what you might be bidding on. They have one for fruit, one for vegetables, and one for meat products. So this was an opportunity to look in your bringing farm to school materials at Appendix C, the direct to school solicitation packet. And it's just some examples of them in different places. One's Durango Public Schools or Minneapolis. And of course, we're not Durango, we're not Minneapolis, and we're not Albuquerque, but it does give you some insight and some ideas into what these might look like. And it's worth your time to look at those and see what kinds of things might be asked of you and what you need to think about. So how to meet common school vendor requirements. And common requirements for potential vendors seeking to sell to school markets include post-harvest, handling practices, food safety practices, insurance and licenses, and distribution logistics. So post-harvest handling practices include like harvest and wash station procedures, product traceability and labeling information, packing requirements, including details like new boxes or maybe reusable crates. Food safety practices, especially third-party certification programs like may require good agricultural practices, good handling practices, and required infrastructure like cold storage, food safety plans, including documentation of practices. Kentucky, again, as I said, Kentucky law doesn't necessarily require schools that you have certifications in place to sell to schools, but individual school systems may. So it's a good thing to look into those. There's really good information on the Kentucky Department of Agriculture website and links to those things on the KentuckyFarmToSchool.com website that can lead you through what you need to do with those, as well as the insurance and licenses. Every school system has a different payment process. So you really just need to talk to the school food service director and find out what you need to have and what to expect as far as getting payment for things. If you register on KentuckyFarmToSchool.com, then you have the opportunity to say if you can deliver and within what radius you can deliver and so on, but you'll have to work out distribution logistics somehow. Some schools actually have, trucks that they can bring. I know in Mount Sterling, when they first started doing farm to school, the school food service director would bring a truck to the orchard to pick up our apples. So, I mean, it's not unheard of, but it's something you're going to have to work out for sure. It's important to know that some vendor requirements are mandatory in order to comply with federal rules, while others are determined by the school district. So regardless, a producer responding to a solicitation must comply in order to be eligible for selection. So when responding to a solicitation, remember to take the opportunity to stand out as a local vendor. So you want to differentiate yourself as a local vendor. And some of the ways that you can do that are to host field trips or farm visits, to come in for classroom visits. You might help with a school garden. You might provide materials for cafeteria education. You might support school community events like a school district might be applying for some kind of grant that involves farm to school, and you might participate in that. Or you might do a farm to school dinner, or you might do the CSA farm, what was it called? Where you're doing your CSA and part of the profits go back to the school. There are all kinds of things that you might do, And you have the opportunity, if you register on KentuckyFarmToSchool.com, to say up front, yeah, I'm willing to host field trips or farm visits. You don't have to be willing to do that in order to sell to schools, but it can be a way to differentiate yourself and to stand out. Important tips to remember when responding to school solicitations are to pay attention to the standard pack size and indicate your capacity to meet the request. So this helps to ensure that your pricing is appropriate, that it's competitive based on volume, and that the school will be ready to receive your products with necessary storage and processing capacity. And that's another feature on the website that I've been talking about, that you get the opportunity to say whether you can, is this something that you have for sale right now? And maybe it's you had a bumper crop more than you expected, or a previous sale fell through and you have a lot of this product you want to get rid of and you just want to sell it right now. Or is this something that you could provide on an extended basis? And it even gives you the opportunity to say, in order to plan to do this, I need to know by this date. So it's a way for you to coordinate with the school food service director. A benefit of working directly with school districts is that sometimes producers can find opportunities to sell products to schools that might not meet the standards of other pickier buyers. So we talked about those smaller apples, or something that maybe a product that just isn't pretty, but if you're going to chop it up and put it in something, it really doesn't matter. If there are products that the school has never purchased before, or ungraded products, make sure to be proactive. Start by describing how you typically grade, sort, and pack products, and then ask how they would like to receive them and negotiate to come to a common agreement. Remember to keep school district needs in mind when negotiating potential deviation from standards. Specifications are utilized by school food authorities to ensure competitive purchasing, since only similar products can be compared, and to maintain predictable operational capacity, like the processing and staff training to deal with that. And we talked about standing out, finding ways to differentiate yourself from other producers. So here's a worksheet that's also in your packet that is worth the time to work through. It's a readiness evaluation. So it just helps you think about how ready you are to respond to school solicitations. So really, to be effective, like so many other things, a lot of it comes down to your ability to have compassion and really to understand the other side of the coin. And I have worked in school food service enough to know it's a big job. It's a really big job. So it really is worthwhile to meet with, or at the very least talk on the phone with the school food service director to learn about their specific needs and requirements. And don't assume that all schools will have the same motivations and requirements. Although I can tell you that most school food service directors are the kindest, best, just most community-minded people that I know, and they really just do want to feed kids good food. So, they're great people to work with. I loved working with school food service directors. I've also been one, so but get to know them and sit down and talk with them about their sourcing practices and preferences, and what are their barriers and how can you help overcome those, and work out in advance when they need things and what they need, and what the specifications need to be, and how are you going to get paid, and what happens if you have a really horrible year and you're not able to come up with everything they need. And I can tell you up front that if they can't get it locally, you know, they can order it from a bigger distributor if they have to, for the most part. But talk about it, because they are on a tight timeline. They're feeding kids and they need to know that they're going to get their product and it's going to be what they wanted it to be, and they're going to get it when they need it. Let's see. Just approaching school nutrition directors. And again, if you locate somebody through the KentuckyFarmToSchool.com website, you already know they want to buy what you have to sell. You can contact them, you can send an inquiry, they can send an inquiry to you if they see you on there about your product. So that's kind of a step up in approaching people, because already you know that one person has what the other person needs. But there are a few things, you know, for as long as I can remember, it's been vogue to make fun of school food. And I had the opportunity actually to have meals with my kids in elementary school. I found the food to be really pretty good. Now in high school, not so much, but we're doing a much better job maybe than we used to. When you show up, be prepared for your conversation, maybe bring some samples, but have done your groundwork and know a little bit about the school ahead of time. Don't show up unannounced. You know, their time is just as valuable as yours. They've got a big job. Lots of times they're managing, you know, several schools, and you don't know. Schools run on a shoestring. People think that the taxpayer money that goes to schools also go to school food service, and that's not true. School food service has to be self-sustaining, and yet they're regulated about, you know, how much they are reimbursed for meals. So they're trying to keep the price down because they want to feed as many kids as they can, but at the same time, it's not really enough to provide the quality of meal that they need or want to produce. So, you know, value that person's time. Let them share your expertise and let them know that you're as passionate as they are about feeding the best product that you can to those kids. You cannot over communicate. And the bottom line is you want to develop a trusted relationship, because you are going to become that preferred provider for that food service director if they trust you and know you. So schedule a meeting that's convenient for both of you and bring samples to show what you can do. Be willing to showcase your product to the students during lunch by bringing small samples. And, you know, be prepared to do a little bit of marketing. Hi, I'm Farmer Joe, and I'm a member of your community, and, you know, your kid might be going to that school. It goes a long way. So here again, there you have a worksheet that helps you be prepared to meet with a school nutrition director, school food service director, school purchaser, whatever you want to call that person. And there are often opportunities to meet with directors. There are some grower buyer meetups. There's the Kentucky Department of Agriculture Administrative Conference. There's the website I've been talking about so much. And you might even just approach your county extension agent. I know Tina recently arranged something. There was a school district in Eastern Kentucky that just really wanted to get going with farm to school, and the establishment, the administration was all behind it, and they approached their extension agent, and he contacted several producers he thought might be interested and set up sort of a meet and greet. And I think it was very successful. I'm really kind of excited about that. So another activity that we don't have time to do because my time really is up. But we are up to conclusions and next steps, I think. So there are some case studies, again, in your bringing the farm to school materials that are, again, are really worth taking a look at. They may not translate directly to Kentucky, but they're good for understanding in general and getting an idea, some ideas that you might want to implement yourself. So this is just your, for your action planning. This is what we've been talking about tonight. And I think it might be a good chance for you to maybe ask some questions, or you could put questions in the chat box and I could try and get back to you with answers if you want. And I put, in addition to my contact information, I also put Tina Garland's information down here because she knows more about all of this stuff than I do, and she might be able to answer questions that I can't.